Yeah, privacy is one of the least talked about but most important things in the tech world. Maybe because it's not sexy new hardware. It's not like something we get a lot of fun. Oh, wow, I get to unbox the latest, most private new phone. Like, it just kind of happens in the background. But it is important. So I like Apple's stance on privacy, and I like what they're doing. I think their move is also, again, we've said this already, but it's very Apple. Where it's like now there's like this stage where you get to installing an app and you opt into everything. And instead of going, oh, wow, this thing on my iPhone tracks me so much, it's suddenly very clear that Facebook is asking for all these permissions and for all this tracking. And when it becomes more clear to the consumer, they can make their own conscious choice about how much they value this privacy. I like it. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see some sort of a similar like nutrition label for your data somewhere in the Play Store and somewhere in future stores. But I do think privacy should be talked about more, and I like the way Apple does it.
Welcome to Geared Up. I'm Andrew Edwards.
I am still John Rettinger.
Geared Up is your weekly look at the world of consumer electronics and gadgets. And John, there's something I realized just this morning.
Oh,
this show is unique in one way.
It's got us.
Well, that. But every week we surpass and have the best guest of any, not just tech podcast, but podcasts in general, while simultaneously not ever surpassing previous guests. We always have the best.
It is interesting.
But never better than anyone who's ever been here. It's crazy. So this week we have another one. Someone who I would say is the best in the game, best at what he does. Someone who I've been watching for over a decade, which means over 29% of my life. He wasn't even a man when I started watching him. MKBHD, Marques Brownlee, how are you doing?
Oh man, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great. Great to see both of you guys. And that's a long time, man.
It's a long time. When I started doing video content, it was 2006. So I certainly wasn't using YouTube. I had all my chips in blip.tv for some reason, which was a terrible bet. But
making a comeback.
Marques was just a child. I mean,
literally,
you were a teenager. You weren't like a little kid, but it's rare to see people kind of, teens will pick a hobby a lot of times that they'll kind of just grow out of. Like they like something for a time. It's almost a fad in some ways. And I specifically remember you through Chris Perillo, who lives like 20 minutes away from me, seeing just the work that you put in from a young age and the dedication, especially through college. When I think of a college student, just an average college student, I'm not thinking someone who is dedicated to perfecting a craft or two crafts, since I don't really know much about Ultimate Frisbee, but apparently being a championship Ultimate Frisbee player while also being an award-winning video content creator must not have been easy. So if for some reason there's people out there listening to this show who aren't familiar with Marques, why don't you give us a rundown of who you are and what you do?
Man, there's no way I live up. First of all, do you guys always butter up the guests that much to get them all in a good mood and everything?
I do my research.
Okay, fair. No, yeah, I've been, like you said, I've been making videos for a long time. Since 2009, that's when I started. I've been making tech videos of sorts, reviews, explainers, just videos about gadgets in the tech world in general. I mean, that's the core of the explanation. There's all kinds of other media that ties to it, but yeah.
So Marques has obviously made a lot of good decisions over the past decade or so, but perhaps one of the best decisions, I don't even know if he remembers this, was I tried to hire him many, 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 many years ago. I mean, probably 8 years ago.
Oh, man.
And perhaps the best decision that he ever made was continuing the independent path and clearly blazing new trails with a production style that I think is often emulated, but never matched or surpassed.
I remember those like old days. Like I go back to the beginning of I'm putting air quotes around production, where it was like, one person, a camera, maybe a light and a mic. And that was like overachieving in 2010, 2011. So like the fact that it's grown this much since we started, the fact that because I see the crazy part is now I see kids starting, literal kids, I'm talking like 12-year-olds who are putting out their first videos. They're passionate about tech and you can see it in their eyes, but also their setup is like incredibly well lit and like a shotgun mic off camera and like these neon lights behind them. It's crazy. So if I was starting today, I'd have a lot harder of a time keeping up with them. But here we are.
Yeah. So then, I mean, back when we started, it was mostly like I was using just a mic and a camera or my webcam, but you started to see things change. I think Marquez, you and John Morrison and Austin, sort of with the more artistic eye towards the content, I think really changed what people think of YouTube as a whole, especially now. I don't think we would have gotten to the YouTube space if it hadn't been sort of for you guys changing the thought of what YouTube videos could and probably should be.
Yeah, no, it's been fun to watch. And I think a lot of other people have joined in this evolution, I guess I would call it, where it's like the tech video doesn't have to be super well shot. But since we're all tech nerds anyway, and we're all into camera gear, and we all mess with cameras and video gear, it just sort of evolved that way. So we take credit for being at the beginning of it, but I think it would have sort of happened like this anyway, just because we're all into cameras in our own way. So it's been really fun.
All right. I feel like anytime someone has you on a show, they just want to dive into your complete history. And you've probably answered these kinds of questions 50 to 100 times. So we're not going to belabor the point. I just wanted to let people get an idea of who you were and why we're so excited to have you here. And almost in a way, I don't want to say proud, but it's just cool to I just remember back then, watching you evolve over time and just feeling like this is just cool to see a kid in high school continue to stick to something, and not just stick to it, but to a lot of people become the best at it, become the best in the world at this thing that they just started to do. So major congrats, major props to you for all you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Let's jump into a couple of quick notes. First, John and I both launched new YouTube channels this week.
Yeah. Unbeknownst to each other, we're laying the foundation for these without ever saying anything.
So we just one day we're like, hey, I'm going to launch this channel. The topic's going to be personal finance. And wait, I'm doing that too. When are you doing it? This week? Oh, I'm doing that too. Shout out to everyone who came out and supported. Yes. I think we were both happy with just the initial launch of our first video into this new foray. John's channel is called Money Rush.
It's true.
My channel is called Hyper Profit. And if you're interested in that topic, check us out. Quick follow-up from last week. I was happy Marquez was here because of the topic. Quick follow-up, AirPods Max case, which last week Renee was saying, why would they throw this in there? Not valuable. I agree on pretty much all points, with the exception being, this is not an excuse for Apple, that it matches up with the whole AirPods use case philosophy, where when you're done using them, you slip them into something and close the top like any other the other two AirPods that we've seen so far. They're looking at me like that's a real stretch, which I agree. That is a stretch. That's the only saving grace.
I mean, they're the same in the fact that they're things that other things go into. I suppose there's very big similarities. Very big similarities.
They both still encase
they go into the top.
Thing. Yeah,
yeah.
They slide into the top, and you enclose them with a lid. But the reason I was glad Marquez was going to be on this episode was because of how much, it seemed like 25% of your AirPods Max review focused on the hatred of the case that Apple included. So if you just want to summarize how you felt, and if that feeling has remained or if it's changed over time.
Yeah, that feeling is definitely lingered. So you can't see, maybe it's not on video, but I'm wearing AirPods Max right now. I think they're great headphones. I really enjoy them. I didn't think I would switch. I ended up switching from my Sonys over there that are on a table in their case because I like these headphones so much. The case, on the other hand, I said it in my review, but there isn't a single good thing about this case. Now, I don't know if, you guys maybe talked about this, but after a lot of the reviews came out, there was an engineer who works for Apple who sort of went on a podcast, or I think at least answered to a journalist about, some questions about how the case got designed. And they explained it a little bit. Oh, they wanted it to be small. They wanted it to fold away. But none of the explanation lined up with any of reality. So it's still... It's a huge pair of headphones that doesn't fold, and you could easily just have a huge case. They didn't. It's a pretty expensive pair of headphones, so you'd want to protect it. It doesn't. You'd want it to at least be like a high quality material. I guess you could... I don't know if I'd even call this a high quality material. It's kind of this rubberized thing. Every case they make is like made out of this, so I guess that's fine. But there's just not a whole lot to it. Even the little slots down here at the bottom don't make sense. I didn't have much good to say about the case. So in this really big contrast between how great the headphones are and how awful the case was, it definitely stood out in my video.
Do you still use the case though?
So I do, and that's because I travel with the headphones in my backpack, and so I need some type of protection. If I like just toss them on my desk, I don't put them in the case because they're too annoying to put them in the case every time.
Sure.
But I do keep them in my backpack, so I have to put them in some kind of case. Maybe someone's going to make a better case soon.
That is the segue. So this case right here is from Waterfield Designs. And the reason I wanted to follow up was because a couple people mentioned this case after the show. Last week.
People can't see this. I mean, you might as well pack another suitcase to put your headphones in.
So here's the thing with this case. So obviously AirPods Max don't fold, so you have to have a gigantic case like this. But the thing with this case that's cool is, so obviously it fits the whole headphone, but inside near the bottom, you can optionally choose these two magnets and flip them up so it protects in between the two so they're not hitting each other. And there's magnets in there which will put them into the ultra low power state that the Apple ones would do. So it's $99, which on top of your $550, it is leather. They also have vegan leather options for people, and they have all these pockets. So you can have all your cables in here for whatever you need to charge, whether it's headphones or anything else. It still feels super big. Like John was saying, as far like slipping this into a backpack does not seem like the easiest thing to do, but there's no other option. If anyone who's going to make an AirPods Max case, be it Apple or someone else that protects the whole headphone, it's going to be this large because they don't fold. So would you, John, you returned yours. Marquez, would you buy something like this? $99, leather or vegan leather, protects the entire headphone and still supports the ultra low power mode, not just the standard low power mode. Would you use that?
So I'm going to say yes. I would, and I would be shocked if a lot of people also would. You know how when you go, you see the behind the scenes of how a gadget is made. Sometimes you get to see some of the old prototypes and some slightly different form factor versions or something. I have no doubt in my mind that there are plenty of cases that look just like that sitting around in like a dumpster at Apple HQ where they made a big version and then they made this like little small version and they thoroughly considered making that exact case and then didn't. And I can't figure out why. I can't figure out why. Yeah, no, I think this would be, I will be taking some notes. I think I might want to pick one of these up.
Waterfield Designs, they are sfbags.com. So SF like San Francisco, sfbags.com, $99. They have they match the colors, the different colors of the AirPods Max. And they also have like a brown leather one that kind of has the distress, like it'll distress over time. Like some people like get that patina.
Are they a secret sponsor that I don't know about?
They are not. They are not. No sponsorship. They did send this over though. They did send this, full disclosure. But I just thought like, let me see what's out there. Like my thing was if I put them in something that's not Apple's case, I want them to go into the ultra low power mode. Like that is my standard. I don't want them dying just because the accelerometer knows that it's being jostled in a backpack. So it kind of maintain some sort of connectivity. So no sponsorship, but it's the only other case that I've seen that supports that one feature that to me was important. The other feature, which may be important to some people, is you can put the AirPods Max in there with their own case. You can double case them if you need to, or if you just want to throw this out, you can use it separate.
Jeez, that's so much work.
It's like when you put the AirPods Pro in and then you put the AirPods Max on top of them because more people know about the AirPods Pro and you don't want them to know you're rich.
If there's a product that needs this much explanation and spurns this much of a aftermarket, I mean, there's clearly something wrong with the product. Hence why I returned mine.
But you know what? This is the Apple thing though. They start with a super hyper overpriced version in this new product category, and then 3 years later, way too late, they make a decently priced, reasonable version.
Yep.
Way too late. Yes.
So when are we going to get the XM4s? But Apple.
I think those are called Beats. That's Beats Wireless, isn't it? In Apple's opinion, I'm saying.
Right.
That's how they compete at the $350 level is with Beats. And then AirPods is a cut above.
Now, I don't want to slander too much, but I feel like Apple knows they could just slap an Apple logo on any pair of Beats and sell it as brand new, and people would love it. People go crazy for it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but people don't really buy Beats like that anymore, right?
I don't think they do. I don't think. Let's move on to another topic. You mentioned a second ago about prototyping over time, and we've seen that. I want to talk about your retro tech series for a second. You had a season 1 last year. I know you're working on season 2 right now. It's actually funny. My brother works in production on the show, and he was like, "Hey, have you heard of this guy, Marquez?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, it's so funny sometimes, like when you're in a bubble and you just think everybody knows what you know because you're in the bubble. So when someone's like, "Have you heard of this thing or this person?" and you're like, "Yeah, of course, everybody knows that person." So tell us about Retro Tech, how season 1 went for you, and maybe like kind of what changes or improvements, without, obviously, I know you can't give too much away, what we can expect for season 2.
Yeah, it was fun. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but if you saw Retro Tech season 1, obviously I focus a lot on new tech like all of us here, but I wanted to sort of throw back a little bit because I, being 27, it sounds weird and old when I say that, but even I now have missed out on a lot of the more important older pieces of tech that directly shape what we have now. So things like the Sega Genesis, things like the 1984 Macintosh, things like the Game Boy that had like a massive impact on culture. So season 1, I just went through like a bunch of things I'd never used, like re-explored them, rediscovered them. It was a lot of fun. Season 2 is a little bit of a twist on that, and that twist will be revealed soon. We're finishing up the production. I'm sure your brother's probably told you. We're in like week 8 of 10 or whatever, but we're finishing up production, and then we'll get into like putting it all together for spring. But there's a little bit of a twist this time. So it's not just 6 new gadgets, but it's again that sort of discovery process that's a lot of fun.
Interesting. So let me ask you this. When you talk about something like a Game Boy, to me, I remember the Game Boy coming out, wanting it badly, and receiving it as a birthday present I think I was in 3rd grade. So to me, like the Game Boy had always been, like, I remember it coming out. So it's not old to me so much, like something that came before, like a rotary phone. How do you see older tech like that was kind of before your time, but not so far before your time that your peers see it the same way?
Yeah.
Does it just seem like an old, irrelevant thing, or are you able to kind of get in the mindset of how it would have been back then?
It is kind of a challenge. I mean, I wasn't alive during a lot of the times that these devices were so innovative. So like the 80s and early 90s, I was born in 93. So yeah, it is a little bit of a like trying to get in the mindset of what it was like, what else was around back then that you would be shocked that this new Game Boy was so great you had to get it, you know? The Dynatac was another one we did where it's like having a phone without a cord was such a big deal, and taking it places and having it, just being able to call people. It's stuff we kind of take for granted, I think, at the end of the day. So I think reversing course a little bit and appreciating it instead of just taking it for granted was the best part of that.
John, did you have a pager back in the day?
I did. Issue of contention in my family, but I did have a pager for like a hot minute before cell phones became a thing.
And I assume, Marquez, you never... that was like before your time, right?
Not only did I never have a pager, but I never had... There's a lot of things I never had. I just saw a TikTok, though, pretty recently of someone asking a child, and when I say child, I mean like a teenager, of how you would take a picture, and he goes like this. He just holds up a square, and his dad goes, "No, you hold it to your eye." And the kid's like, "What are you talking about? Why would you hold it to your eye? The screen is right there." And they did the same thing with like, how would you make a phone call? And he holds it up to his head like this, and the dad goes like this with his pinky sticking out. And he's like, "Why are you doing it like that?" So this whole generational thing of like, I don't remember the pager. I don't remember a time before what I know now. It's fun to look back at sometimes.
That is funny. The one thing that always gets me is, although you don't see this a lot on the Mac these days, but if you're on Windows and you want to save something, you still have to click on like a hard disk icon where it's like,
in Office.
Do teenagers even know what that is? Like, what is why is that save? Mm-hmm. Well, it's because we used to have to insert something and put it on there and then carry it around with us. You would think they would change it to like a thumb drive or something at this point. But anywho, no, so you can't talk about when we can expect more news on Retro Tech? Spring
is when you should look for season 2. Spring is going to be, we'll be finishing things. Obviously, the production schedule gets like sort of, there's a lot of variables with the state of the world right now, but we're looking for spring.
Okay.
Sure.
Next, big topic this week. And again, glad Marquez is here. Tesla.
Oh, boy.
Yes. Tesla Model S redesign, Model X redesign, and Roadster delay. I own a Model 3 and Model Y. I've always felt the Model S, anytime like I've brought in one of my cars to be serviced and they give me like a loaner Model S, I'm like, why is this thing so gigantic? That's just how I feel. Marquez owns a Model S. John, you have a Model 3?
I have a 3 now, and I know Marquez and I got our cars around the same time because we were both waiting for a redesign.
Yep.
Right.
I was coming from an X. I know he had an S beforehand. We were debating. So I just have a huge question. And I want to know what you think about the redesign. But is that steering wheel going to make its way into production? The yoke steering wheel?
Man. It really depends on who you ask. Like if you ask someone at Tesla, they'll be like, yeah, that's what's going to happen. And if you ask literally anyone else, it's like, I don't think so. I don't think it's going to make it.
Do you want it to make it into production? Do you want to drive with that?
A little bit. I said in the video, there's some crazy stuff out there that I haven't tried that I am willing to give a shot. I would like to test drive one before I really decide if I want it to make it to production. Because it seems really cool, but it seems also sometimes awful.
For those that maybe haven't seen it, picture like a steering wheel with the top taken off, essentially. And Tim Stevens from Roadshow put a really interesting article. It's like people are saying, well, race cars have that, right? But race cars, if you turn a steering wheel like an eighth of an inch, like the car just turns, almost 90 degrees.
Wow.
Or 45 degrees. So it makes sense for that, but you can't give that type of turning on a regular passenger car. If the wind blows, you'll end up 6 lanes over. But Tesla has done things in the past to solve problems. Like that center screen in the Model 3 is a big problem, evidently, in the Model Y for crashes. They can come right at you. So Tesla redesigned an airbag to eliminate that. So I'm sure they obviously thought that something like that would be very drastic and they would fix it. But man, it's interesting look. I'll give them that.
There's a video floating around of someone driving a prototype Roadster sometime, like right after the event, where they also have that yoke steering wheel. And there's a lot of talk about maybe Tesla will do ratioed steering like an F1 car. So you turn it a little bit and you can switch lanes, but you turn it a half a turn and you're like really moving. And there's the video floating around. He does like a full like double turn with the yoke wheel and it just looks awful. It looks so inconvenient to to spin this whole thing around like I don't know. I'm sure they're thinking a lot about it, but I have no idea.
Do you think the upgrade to the wheel, the interior, the processing, everything was worth the wait?
It's a good upgrade. I definitely think it's a good upgrade. My question is it worth upgrading if you have an older Model S, which I have a relatively new, I have a 2-year-old car, and I don't really think it's actually that big a deal. The biggest difference to me is the Plaid Plus's 520-mile range. All the other interior stuff, my car is going to keep getting software updates. My car is still fantastic range, still has great charging, but it's just a bunch of small things that have added up to being a nice refresh. If I had a 4-year-old Model S with like 240 miles of range and a 4-second 0 to 60, and I'm starting to feel like I'm itching for that upgrade, I think this would be sweet. But that's not a whole lot of people. So I think this is still designed for like first time EV buyers, because I still strongly believe Model S is, and you might disagree, Andrew, is the greatest daily driver on planet Earth. I don't think there's really anything close. So I think this bumps up its lead a little bit.
I do need to clarify. I'm very interested in test driving what they've done here with the new model. I don't think I want a yoke steering wheel. At least give me the option for a traditional one. But at the end of the day, I bought a Model 3 and then bought a second Model 3 like 2 months later because they announced the performance model. And I was like, well, that's the one I wanted in the first place. And I thought that was coming years later. So I'm the kind of person, like, I just love tech. Like I want to have the most feature rich experience, I guess, if you will. And so seeing, previously it feels like a really large car, but it also feels like the technology is older than what's in a Model 3. Now it feels like it is an improvement in that area. So if I can get over the size, and again, I've never owned one, so it's only really been, having it for 2 to 3 days at a time when my car's in the shop. If I could get used to the size, everything else looks like a win, in my opinion. I like the landscape orientation of the display. I'm super curious about what they were saying about like the gaming, like 10 teraflops, like it's on par with the latest gen consoles. Like, is this streaming gaming or is it local gaming? What's happening? What's up with this screen in the back seat that kind of looks cool, but also looks kind of uncomfortable to like crane your neck down for hours on end? But this, I think, is a good matchup to like what Lucid will be releasing soon. Like Tesla had to do something with their flagship sedan that made it on par or above what's coming down from what may be their first legit competitor in the United States. John, what's happening? Do you have a delivery coming?
No, there's quite a commotion going on outside. I think neighbors may be coming to actual blows outside my window. Which is always fun. If this is on video, I would just turn the camera around. Listen, my lease is up. I did a 2-year lease on my Model 3. It's up in December. I can't wait.
Oh, that's perfect.
I went from like, I'm getting a Rivian R1T. I want a pickup truck to like, ooh, that Model X is looking mighty nice. Mighty nice. And that screen that looks weird to crane your neck, different use cases, right? I have kids. And when I go on road trips, it's very annoying with kids. If I could stream, put a TV show going on down there and my wife and I could have quiet for an hour, I'm in. There's not a price that I wouldn't pay for something like that. But Tesla hired, I believe, the head of Volvo's interior. It must have been 5 or 6 years ago. And I think if there's areas where Tesla was deficient, it was in their interior quality. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to seeing, if that's sort of up to par now with the competition and what's coming from Lucid and the Rivian onslaught and whatever else company is coming down the pipe. But Tesla's software and their AI and the computational processing that's going on is unmatched. So you take a car that already can do a lot computationally, and you added what I'm presuming is a new GPU, obviously, inside of there. And the potential for self-driving from a pure hardware standpoint is clearly there, right? Like all of our cars are theoretically capable of self-driving, according to Elon, right? We've seen it in full self-driving beta. But it seems like that would be like a baby step, right? This seems like this might actually be the hardware that's capable of actually really doing it with us sleeping in the back, or the robo-taxi fleet. And I think that's what's really exciting for what Tesla's doing, isn't even from like a car standpoint, necessarily even from a battery or range standpoint, but from an AI and a software standpoint. They are so far ahead of everybody else, and that gap isn't even close.
Yeah. Sounds like you're in. Sounds like you're getting one.
I'm kind of in. I keep looking at that X. I'm like, well, I could probably trade my lease in early, but I have a soft spot in my heart for the S. Like it was my first EV. I don't know. I go back and forth. I'm excited for something new. Something new at least.
Speaking of new, delayed Roadster. Marquez, like, did you earn 1 or 2? I don't even remember. Or was that Andy Sly who earned like 6? Like,
I technically, so it was the referral program. You got 2% discount for every referral over a certain amount. And so I think I technically earned like 156% off or something like that. So I got 1.5. 1.5.
Okay.
So I have a free one sitting in my account. And depending on how they arrange the rest of the program, maybe it's a half price second one. Maybe it just goes away. I don't know. But yeah, there will be a Roadster here at the end of the day, whenever it comes out.
Do you see the picture in your account?
I do, finally. It took a while.
What a tease.
Yeah.
To just like, see that sitting there.
Yeah.
Is that going to be your daily driver car? That's what I'm curious about.
So there's 2 feet of snow outside. I live in the Northeast. So no, I cannot daily drive every day of the year a Roadster. However, when it's nice out, when it's spring, when it's sunny, when it's beautiful, absolutely. I will drive the mess out of that car, and then I'll have a Model S or some sedan or something like that with a little more height for everything else. I mean, Cybertruck's coming out this year, allegedly.
Right.
So we'll see.
What is your thoughts on when Elon continues to tease like rockets built in to the road? Like, what do you envision? Because I'm first of all, if fire is coming out of a car, to me that implies some sort of gasoline, which obviously we know that's not going to be.
I have a very clear vision of it.
Is this man trolling us?
No, I have so here's how it's going to work. Ready? So cold gas thrusters. So you've seen those like rockets when they self-land, right? They have to orient themselves in the air. And the way that they push and steer those 10,000 ton things, however big they are, is they have compressed air that goes through systems and exhausts out of different sides of it. So if you see an astronaut like move across, that's compressed air. So in the back of the car, maybe replacing the back seats, maybe the trunk, whatever, they'll have a huge compressed air tank and pumps to fill up that compressed air can. And around the car in various places, behind it, maybe on the sides, they will have exhausts for that compressed air. Because right now they're up against the limits of physics and traction when it comes to tires. 0 to 60 and 1.9 is about as good as you're ever going to see on street tires, no matter how much horsepower you have. But if you have compressed air, you can just exceed the laws of traction and then just shoot gas out of the back of the car and go faster than 0 to 60 1.9. So Elon keeps talking about it flying and all these other crazy things. Maybe you can put compressed air under the car and maybe at the front of the car so it can like brake super hard. I don't know exactly where it will be and how that'll look, but I do actually think this is reasonably possible, and it will be very dangerous in the hands of regular people.
That is incredible. My brain is broken imagining these things on the road with just compressed air all over the
That scenario sounds both far-fetched and incredibly plausible at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Elon Musk.
That's exactly the void he lives in. Far-fetched and maybe plausible scientifically.
Yep.
Have you tried full self-driving yet? Or the beta of it?
Yeah. It's funny is I really like driving. So I don't actually use self-driving as much as I think a lot of other people. But obviously I have the software. I paid for it once in a while. I'm coming back from a road trip from a tournament or something like that. Obviously not lately. But yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'll turn it on. It'll drive me for a while. And I'm just sort of fascinated watching the wheel move and the highway exits now work and it reads the stop signs. So it's cool.
The full self-driving beta, like the city street self-driving, have you tried that one? Or is that what you're talking about?
I haven't gotten it to city streets yet. I still really rely for highway stuff. And obviously that's where it's best.
That's fair.
Yeah.
The next thing on the list seems so unexciting based on the conversation we just had. So just a little footnote, I guess. Ford has announced that they will be running Android Auto starting in 2023 on all vehicles. Android Auto is going to be the default infotainment system in all vehicles 2 years away.
Not necessarily Android Auto, Google powered, which I think is a difference.
Google powered. Well, what else?
I think when I talked about Tesla's computational superiority, this is a big push by Ford. Android Auto is just a mirroring technology.
Yes.
Right? Like that's just a mirroring from your interface from your phone. Google's been working on sort of a full AI. You've seen it in what the Polestars got it and some of the other Volvos are getting it. But it's computational and hardware based. So I think it's more than just like seeing Android on your screen. It's letting Ford, I think at least appears to be, jump the line to get closer to what Tesla's doing and the computational power and algorithms needed for self-driving and for autonomy. And Google certainly has a lot of access to that, with what Waymo has done and things along those lines. So I think it's a huge win for Ford, who's putting obviously a big bet on electric vehicles and is sort of dedicated to pushing out more EVs. I think full EV by 2035, if 2035 or 2040. So it's a huge push forward for them, and people that are inevitably Apple fans going to be upset about this. It has nothing to do with what phone's in your pocket. Nothing at all. But it's amazing to see the software companies start to lead the charge behind physical cars.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. One of the biggest advantages Tesla has, like you said, with all that software is they have lots of cars that people buy and drive in autopilot a lot. So they have millions and millions of miles of data to improve their systems. So the question is, will Ford running this across their whole fleet allow them to log that much data and start to catch up? Yeah, I think it's cool.
The crazy thing, though, is people keep their cars for so long that when Ford starts this in 2023, it's not like every Ford owner all of a sudden is logging these miles, right? It's going to take, it could take close to 7 to 10 years before they really see a substantial number of miles being allotted at the same time that Tesla is continuing to bank. I believe I tweeted this about a week ago, and I forget what the exact numbers were, but it was something like Waymo it was like 12 million miles logged, and Tesla had like 2 billion, and Waymo was number 2. Like Tesla's number, like that chasm between number 1 and number 2 is so huge that it's hard for most people to realize how much further Tesla is than anyone else on the planet. And now we went back to Tesla, even though the topic was Ford. But that was it for Ford. Moving away from cars, iOS 14.5 is coming. And one of the main features is unlock iPhone with Apple Watch. So instead of presenting you with the passcode screen when it determines Face ID sees you're wearing a mask, it'll right now just give you the passcode screen almost instantly. Instead, if you're wearing an unlocked Apple Watch on your same iCloud account, it will unlock your phone by way of your watch already being authenticated. And that's kind of their way around not having a Touch ID, feature currently. I thought that was a big deal to mention because who knows how long we're still going to be needing to wear masks. And this is something Apple's kind of trying to solve now rather than having to wait for the next cycle of iPhones.
Yeah, not only how long we're going to wear masks, but how long till we get a fingerprint reader back in an iPhone. So yeah, definitely a good way. I mean, their Apple Watch unlocks have been great on the Mac, so I'm not shocked that they did build this in. The question is, will we get Touch ID in the iPhone 12s, 13? Hopefully.
That's the rumor. I mean, the rumor is in display Touch ID, which great. The more biometric authentication you can do, great. Give me all the options, the way Samsung does. Just give me the options. Let me do whatever I prefer. What kind of caught me off guard, though, was the realization that currently you can unlock your Apple Watch by unlocking your iPhone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so there's going to have to be a change there because you can't, if you unlock this, which already unlocks that, now that unlocks this, seems like a security loophole that's going to need to be closed somehow. But I don't know. I think it's more for me. It's less about the mask and more about this is such an Apple thing to do. No one else, maybe it's because no one else has a watch that's worth really wearing. If you're carrying an Android device, that's just my opinion. I mean, listen, I do carry an iPhone as my main device, but I think a lot of us in this profession, we're very familiar with pretty much every, especially an American-made device. We're very familiar with those and use those too. Sure. But no one else is thinking the way Apple thinks. And this unlock with your Apple Watch is such an Apple thing to do. And it's going to solve a major pain point, a first world problem, of course, but a major pain point nonetheless, in that if you're wearing a mask and you're annoyed by it not seeing your face, you no longer have to pull your mask down in anger or frustration. You can just use your Apple Watch and get into your phone.
Never pull your mask down anyway, no matter where you are. But yeah, it's something that, on the Android side with their wearables and even their phones have had for years, right? They've secure Wi-Fi, secure locations. I mean, secure position of the sun, they'll unlock your phone for you. It's interesting to see Apple sort of realize, obviously the times are different than they were probably when the software was being developed, right? I'm sure this was something that was in their plans for a while and probably got escalated, but it certainly makes sense, right? There's nothing more. I have everything I have secured on my phone is on my computer. I can already use my watch to unlock my computer. Obviously, it's less likely, I guess, to steal my computer or sort of have it fall, but it's certainly a transition that makes sense. And maybe it's a precursor to Touch ID on phones, but perhaps Touch ID on watches as well, adding an extra layer of security beyond just a PIN code, right? You want to unlock your phone, you put your finger on, there's clearly a spot for it on the Apple Watch, right? Just like we have on the new iPad Airs, put your finger right there, unlock it, and your phone is good to go. Maybe that's a stopgap if we don't actually get an optical or ultrasonic fingerprint reader on the 12S, iPhone 13, whatever they decide to call it. I could see that being an interesting selling point and certainly a reason people would upgrade watches.
Do you think there's any reason not to have a fingerprint reader in the next iPhone? Like, Apple's notorious for waiting and waiting and waiting, and then just when the tech has gotten good enough, boom, they do it the Apple way, and it's the best one. We've got maybe 3 years now of okay, we have, ultrasonic fingerprint readers. We have optical fingerprint readers. They're bigger now. They're faster. It's good enough now, right?
I've been blown away by how good Qualcomm's new ultrasonic is on like the S21 line. Like that's crazy fast. I mean, so obviously there's an off-the-shelf part that could probably be used. But the rumors of them going optical, but like weird optical with some extra layer of AI on top of it is interesting. But I can't see any hardware reason why they wouldn't implement it right now, right? It's more biometric options, which Apple's clearly in favor of.
Yeah, for me, I've never liked any in-display fingerprint reader until the S21 line. Like you can put your thumb where the reader is, even when the screen is off and you're in your device. Like that feels like, what more do you want at this point? You can instantly get into your phone, even when the display is off, just by putting your thumb in the natural area where you would put it anyway.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's it.
I completely agree. It does lend itself, I think, to the next topic that I really wanted to ask Marquez about with privacy and what's going on with Apple and Facebook. If I can just transition from that and with Apple taking a harder stance on privacy and making people have to opt in to a lot of the data gathering that Facebook in particular has sort of been very egregious about snooping around. And Facebook has now taken a more aggressive stance against Apple, rumors of a lawsuit, taking out full-page newspaper ads saying Apple is anti-small business because small businesses, I'm trying to keep the argument straight in my head, because small businesses won't be able to find new customers because Facebook is unable to track users through iPhones. And it sounds like I'm making that up. But I believe that was the argument that Facebook is making. So I guess, Marquez, what's your opinion on the privacy issues? And are we giving up any semblance of privacy when we sort of venture out into the digital world?
Yeah, privacy is one of the least talked about, but most important things in the tech world. Maybe because it's not sexy new hardware. It's not like something we get a lot of fun. Oh, wow, I just unboxed the latest, most private new phone. Like it just kind of happens in the background, but it is important. So I like Apple's stance on privacy and I like what they're doing. I think their move is also, again, we've said this already, but it's very Apple, where it's like now there's like this stage where you get to installing an app and you opt into everything. And instead of going, oh, wow, this thing on my iPhone tracks me so much, it's suddenly very clear that Facebook is asking for all these permissions and for all this tracking. And when it becomes more clear to the consumer, they can make their own conscious choice about how much they value this privacy. I like it. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see some sort of a similar like nutrition label for your data somewhere in the Play Store and somewhere in future stores. But I do think privacy should be talked about more. And I like the way Apple does it.
Can I just say, for Facebook, all these full page ads and this whole campaign against Apple, when did Mark Zuckerberg, and maybe it's the answer is always, feel that he has the right to your data because you download his app? Because you choose to use Facebook, he has the right to your location, to the data in your photos, all that EXIF data, everything. When you type a post and delete it and not even post it, they still capture what was typed and save that. Like all this stuff. How do you make the argument that it's wrong for us to not have this? You're taking what we deserve to have. It's almost as if they're saying the data doesn't belong to the user, it belongs to us, and you're taking it from us and giving it back to the user, and that's not right. How do you get to that?
I think that's always been part of Facebook's core business model. And I think a lot of it's just starting to come to light. Facebook stands, just for perspective, Facebook stands to lose, I believe the latest estimate was around $10 billion from people not opting in. And I think Facebook is now transitioning perhaps away from the lawsuit to education campaign on why people should opt in. And the big reason they're trying to persuade people to opt in is and again, it sounds like I'm making this up and I'm trying to be objective here, is a better ad experience. A better ad experience. You will see more targeted ads to you, Marquez, to you, Andrew, of things that you like. Just give Facebook access to information that your Bluetooth device you're connected to. Let them see where you are when you're outside of the app. Let them check the Wi-Fi device you're connected on. Let them check your GPS data even when you're not inside of the app. But in return, you will get better ads. This reeks to me, and maybe this is a really bad analogy, of like NCAA and college sports. You get a play. We're not going to pay you for anything that you're doing or any of the value that you're bringing, but you should just do it. You should just do it anyway. I don't know how. This is like the most losing argument I've ever seen. And Facebook is going to dump hundreds of millions of dollars into an education campaign that is like the most asinine education I have ever seen.
I agree with you. It's probably not going to work.
That's my rant.
But
thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
I do try to see both sides of any, argument where there are significant stakeholders on each side. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people that work for Facebook that feel very strongly about this has always been baked into the fine print and the user license agreement. When you agree to use Facebook, they already agreed. This is something Facebook's, been doing forever. And the fact that they now suddenly will be opted out until opted back in is super wrong. Why would Apple do this to us? Our business will be hurt by it. I think they probably know that this educational campaign isn't going to work, but they're going to try anyway. I don't think you really have that much, I don't know if the word is clout, but how is Facebook going to paint Apple as the bad guy? Is there anyone out there who loves Facebook and just hates Apple? I don't know if this is going to work. So they'll try, but I think they're also playing a lot of other cards behind the scenes of other ways that they can work around this.
It is also interesting, though, that Facebook is saying this hurts their business when Apple is clearly targeting the benefit of the user, which then kind of informs you of Facebook's take. When Facebook is making a decision, are they more likely to make a decision that benefits their business and advertising partners, or one that will benefit the users of the service? That kind of answers the question right there, right? Why would you hurt your business partners for the benefit of your users? That sounds crazy. That's what they're saying.
Yeah. To play devil's advocate, just because I know it will be played, wouldn't you rather have better ads? Wouldn't you rather the ads not be about where to buy a horse and about, I don't know, diapers when you don't have a kid, or just random complete garbage that doesn't apply to you at all? Wouldn't you rather have ads that are actually kind of useful?
I want the ads that tell me where to buy a horse, number one. But number two,
I want to buy a diaper for my horse.
Horse diaper ads.
Let me pay, though. I will pay. Twitter, let me pay. Facebook, any service, let me pay for an ad-free experience. Give the people who would want to do that the option, and then there's your money, and give me I'll pay for my privacy.
It's not. I don't think it's even close to that.
Oh, I'm sure.
We talked a lot about Apple. I think Apple never does anything without thought behind it. Every move they make, as benign as it might seem to us, is done deliberately. And from a marketing standpoint, what they're doing is really interesting. They knew who they were isolating when they started doing this. They were very aware it was going to be a Facebook issue when they started putting these into iOS 14 betas. But it makes a bad guy and it makes a good guy. And it makes it very clear, prospectively, obviously who Apple is positioning themselves as. And it makes a common enemy for a point that Apple feels very strongly about for privacy. Now, Apple's main goal, obviously, is to their shareholders, right? All these people who scream that Apple's stealing money it's just a ridiculous argument. But from a shareholder standpoint, positioning your company as the good guy in the battle on privacy is so brilliant. And Facebook, as a company people are beginning to be more wary of anyway, it's a fascinating exercise in marketing.
That's true. All right, let's move on to our last topic of the show. 2021 hopes, expectations. John, you proposed this one.
It's true.
I don't know if you have any answers for this one.
Well, I talked a lot. Let's let Marquez the question is supposed to be tech trends that might finally come to fruition in 21, things we might devices, yeah, things you might actually see this year in the realm of plausibility.
Right. So there's a couple ways I could go. I mean, one of the things I talked about, I did a video earlier in the year actually of just 2021 tech I'm looking forward to, which is pretty broad. But if you remember all of Apple's campaign last year about 5G just got real. 5G just got real. And it was kind of cheesy, but also yeah, they're kind of right. I think you're going to see every phone in 2021 have 5G, and I'm excited about that. So that's one thing. I think electric cars continue to take a step forward in the world's thought about them and overall usage. Obviously, maybe Cybertruck happens this year, which would be pretty sweet. Allegedly, the first...
Do you think Lucid ships on time?
No. I don't think anyone ships anything in the electric car world on time, other than maybe the occasional Tesla accessory. It's very rare. The stuff's hard. So I don't think they ship on time, but I do hope they ship something good. I hope they ship what they promise, basically. So I think electric cars take a step up, and I'll toss in Apple Silicon Macs. I'm just looking forward to the rest of them. The first ones were good, like really good.
Yeah.
So, when we get that MacBook Pro, seeing all these rumors about, when we get this new iMac, we're seeing all these rumors about, they promised a 2-year transition. So if they go through their whole lineup in 2 years, maybe we see a new Mac Pro too. So Apple Silicon, I'll toss that in too.
Let me ask you this about Apple Silicon. I was just thinking about that this morning. So there's the rumor that there will be an update to the Intel Mac Pro and also the M1 Mac Pro, which will be smaller. My assumption is if there's an update to the Intel Mac Pro, that would be this year's product. And then the new Mac Pro will be the completion of the 2-year transition next year. If we get let's just call it an M1Z iMac this year, do you see yourself moving from the Intel Mac Pro to that? He's shaking his head vehemently no.
No.
And if not, why not?
So I'm a huge fan of the current Mac Pro. It's been a workhorse for me for is it 2 years now that I've had it? Absolutely the best computer I've ever owned. I can edit 8K raw, uncompressed workflows without dropping frames. It's unreal. So you'd have a really hard time convincing me to switch to any iMac that inevitably has significantly less upgradability and thermal potential. I guess, yeah, the Apple Silicon version is going to be really good, but the only computer I would change to is another different Mac Pro. I got to have the thermals. I got to have maximum performance just in my work machine. Now, if you're talking about at home, where I'm sitting in front of an iMac right now, yeah, sure. Yeah, that'll be fun. I'd be down to switch to almost anything in this new lineup, I think. But for work, it's got to be the Mac Pro.
I want to reiterate, and I understand everything you just said. Apple's entry-level computer today outperforms the entire lineup with the exception of the Mac Pro today. That's the entry level. So if they release an iMac...
You got to quantify what outperforms means.
Yeah.
Outperforms on single core for sure by... It's not even close. My question, I guess, is more if there's an iMac that is, let's say, 30 inches and outperforms the current Mac Pro in both single and multi-core function, but obviously would not be as modular or expandable. Mm-hmm. Do you consider switching due to power, or do you stay because of the expandability?
So it's an even bigger no, because if I see that level of performance in a new first gen Apple Silicon iMac, then that means what we get from the Mac Pro is going to be even better than what we see, and that I should definitely get that one. The other question is GPU. Obviously, we love CPU performance, and single core was incredible on these M1 Macs. Multi-core was great, but obviously if you want to do stuff that takes advantage of the GPU, you got to get a machine with the GPU. 16-inch MacBook Pro still crushed it with GPU, and the 2 GPUs I have in my Mac Pro do a lot of work for me right now. So that's still something to keep an eye on, but I am very much looking forward to whatever they put in those machines.
Okay, next question. I'm just taking you down the line.
Okay.
Half-size Mac Pro.
Right.
Incredible power. What is your anticipation? Like, my main fear is, what am I doing with these 2 MPX module graphics cards and the Afterburner card? Because when I hear half size and when I hear things like similar to a G4 Cube, what that means to me is this stuff is not going to fit in there. So do you have any worry about what a new Mac Pro might offer? Like, is there a step backwards where Apple released this computer with so much modularity that we may be losing some of that again?
So there's a pretty big conundrum, I guess I'll call it, in the Mac Pro world, which is if you're actually a professional that uses your machine for work and relies on it daily for stability and everything it does, you almost by default have to skip the first generation of new things, because that's where you find all the bugs. That's where you have to iron stuff out. And so when we're gonna see this new Mac Pro come out half size. It's gonna be really tempting. It's gonna be sexy. It's gonna be smaller. It will not support the MPX modules. It won't have the benefit of 2 years of people putting work in and testing. of all the Intel stuff we know works so well. So it's going to be really tempting because of the performance it promises. But I think the smart move will actually be to wait a little bit. And whether that means wait for a second gen or wait for some software updates to iron stuff out, then we'll really see what it's made of and what it's capable of. But it's going to be really tough to not get it as soon as it's announced. Because they're going to drop some crazy numbers on stage. Like, this will outperform every Mac Pro ever made ×2. And we'll all just go, what are you talking about? But we'll have to cross our fingers on that.
John, I want to know from you. I'm very curious. The same question, talking about our 2021 hopes, expectations. What are you looking forward to this year?
Listen, I think I'm looking for improvements in battery technology, which would make everybody's lives better. And I think this is the year of rollables. I think we get the first prototype, odd developer rollable technology. It's something new. It's something shiny. It's something to talk about. Something that's probably hardly impractical, will break easy, and will probably have rocks somehow embedded underneath the screen and screen protectors that come off. But I think it's awesome to see this first gen hardware developed out in the open. I give companies credit. That's what I'm personally jazzed about. And then back to the M1 Mac and Apple Silicon things. These computers have no business being as good they are for a freshman effort. I mean, clearly I have no business being this good. I'm on a MacBook Air right now that's just been a beast of a computer. On the pro side, whether it's with graphics cores or they open it up to GPUs, it's amazing. And I think it's going to push competition further. I think you're going to see Intel obviously respond in kind, maybe a new race for ARM respond, and think whenever one company does something really well in industry, it raises all ships. I'm really excited to see the response. And it's going to take probably a full 12 months before we see the response. So towards the end of 2021, we'll see something. But everybody's going to win, right? Whether you hate Apple, you love Apple, you don't care at all, it's going to make everything better. And I really want to see what the competition's response to Apple Silicon is going to be.
I have a suspicion that, similar to when Steve Jobs was on stage and said, this phone, the first iPhone, is 5 years ahead of what anyone else is doing. And it really kind of did feel like it took Android half a decade to kind of catch up to where Apple was 5 years after with the iPhone 5. Apple has been working on this line of chips for a decade. Yeah. And so when competitors are rushing to jump in with their take on what Apple's doing, I feel like it's going to take 3 years before we see on the PC side of things the same type of speed and just precision and battery life and everything that Apple puts into their chips replicated on the other side. But year of rollables, can you define year of rollables? Because
I mean, like we saw rollables from TCL, from LG. I mean,
do you think there's going to be a rollable release though?
The screens literally roll out.
Oh, I know, but these are like tech demos
to make a larger screen. I think we're going to see it, man. I think Samsung or LG is going to be the first to do it.
Are you predicting there will be a rollable device that the average consumer can buy before the end of 2021?
Not the average consumer. Think like first gen Galaxy Fold, where I think they should have called it a developer edition, made it crazy expensive, and a lot of the problems could have been avoided. I think we see something like that. Not an average. I got $300 for a new phone. I'm going to get myself a rollable. And we're talking like $3,000, probably minimal functionality, but like, look at this thing.
But you expect us to be able to buy one for whatever price before the end of 2021.
I do. You can hold me to that.
Wow.
Bold prediction.
I love that.
I think it's going to happen. I'm optimistic. Why not? But a pessimistic past 12 months. What are you thinking, Drew? What's your, like, what are you excited about for this year?
I'm kind of like, I think all three of us have talked about the Mac, and it's like, I cannot remember when the last time was where so many people were excited about a computer. Like a computer, a new laptop or a new desktop. It's just not the focus. Like an individual who buys one, they're excited that they have a new thing. But as a collective, a new computer just hasn't really been on our radar when compared to a new smartphone or a new service even. So we're like experiencing the dawn of a new age in computing. And to me, especially, I mean, as someone who needs computing power for like the kind of jobs that we do, that is just really cool to experience for me. So I am really excited to see what comes next as far as pro machines from Apple. And then, my most used device every year is going to be my iPhone. So I'm always just curious to see how that's going to evolve.
Yeah.
Don't expect too much craziness this year, but just seeing again, the locks, like where is the lockstep in the A series processor and the M series processor going forward? How does the iPad fit into that going forward? Sure. All of that to me is kind of the most fascinating thing. And then also, can we get the Cybertrucks out in Q4? If so, excited about that too.
Elon already said unlikely, so it'll may possibly deliver several, like one or two will come out. The factory's not even standing yet, right? Like there's not even like four walls around where it's going to be built.
Andrew, does the iPhone have a port?
Ooh, does the iPhone have a port? Okay, so I mentioned this last week. Hot tip, inside information. Not a hot tip anymore because I already mentioned it last week. But I know for a fact that the ultra wideband chip can transfer data at like Thunderbolt speeds. So if you can have the MagSafe slap on the back of your phone and that becomes fast data transfer along with fast charge, because MagSafe this year is faster than wired charging last year, I can then see how the transition happens with minimal disruption. If you need to transfer a backup from your phone, from your Mac, just slap it on there and you're good. Is this year the year to do it? I feel like it's a next year thing. I feel like it's not an S year thing in my opinion. This is like a.
You don't think like one phone, like a iPhone 10 style like flagship?
I don't feel like Apple. I don't feel like this is Samsung would do it. Samsung would say, here's the Ultra, and the Ultra doesn't even have a port on it anymore, but the whole rest of the line does. The Ultra has 5G, the rest of the line doesn't. Apple doesn't seem to be that kind of company. Apple's more, we're all in or we're not. Although, I mean, they have a new phone with Touch ID still and no Face ID. So
iPhone 10 was only a few years ago, man.
Yeah, 10 and 8.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Oh, okay. If I had to listen, if I was making a prediction, I'm saying port goes away 2022, not 2021.
Okay.
Marquez, can you get a phone without a port, an iPhone without a port this year? Have you been testing it for 3 weeks already?
If I'm a betting man, because I don't have insider info, I'm going to bet the port is gone.
What?
I agree. I'm with him. I think there's
one phone. Are you serious? Wow.
One phone.
And everyone will have your reaction, Andrew. Are you serious? No port? But that's the Apple. That's the Apple twist. They're hitting their stride. They're going to do it.
I don't mind that, by the way. I'm not against the no port thing. I just feel like it's 1 year after introducing the charging accessory feels too soon just in my head. But if you guys are right, I'm completely on board and I want to see it happen. There it is. That's our show. Marquez Brownlee, thank you so much for taking the time out to
thank you
join the show, talk tech with us. If for some reason people don't know, let people know where they can find you if they want to learn more about your
nobody that doesn't know.
I know, it's such a weird, I just say it every week. Just have to be consistent.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. If you search these 5 letters on pretty much any search box on the internet, you should find me. MKBHD, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I'm out there.
And that is it for this edition of Geared Up. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, you can catch John and I on YouTube. I'm at youtube.com/gearlive and John is at youtube.com/John4Lakers. Feel free to head over and subscribe to our channels to stay up to date on all the latest tech. Speaking of subscribing, you can subscribe to Geared Up in your favorite podcast app if you haven't done so already. Just search Geared Up, that's 2 words, not one, in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Overcast, or really wherever you choose to listen. If you like what we do, please consider leaving us a rating and review. It really helps other people find the show. Geared Up is a Gear Live podcast, and you can see more from us at gearlive.com. Thank you so much for listening. For John Rettinger, I'm Andrew Edwards, and we'll catch you in the next episode.